Fight City NYC. Check us out on the web at www.fightcitynyc.com and friend us on Facebook. We got a lot of boxing to talk about. We also got a lot of mixed martial arts. I want to welcome our new MMA analyst, Dominic Morrow. Welcome to the show, Dominic.
Thanks, Ben.
Let's jump right into next Saturday's fight card. It's going to be a fight night card, which is free for the viewers.
Right, free on Versus, if you get that.
If you get Versus.
Right after the bullfighting and fishing.
Right, and maybe we'll see one of Top Rank's heavyweight fights on the card, or I don't know. But this is usually something that the UFC uses to showcase up-and-coming fighters.
Right. Yeah, these are fighters who are younger, don't have a lot of experience, or fighters who've got a lot of experience but not necessarily a lot of success against top talent. So they sort of square off in these sort of lower key fights.
Okay, so let's get right into the card. We got Jake Shields versus Ellenberger, and this is the matchup. Now, what do you have to say about this fight?
Well, Jake Shields is a world-class grappler. He's undefeated in the last 7 years, except to George St. Pierre in his last fight out. And losing to George St. Pierre, not exactly a big mark against a guy. His boxing keeps getting better, but he's way more comfortable on the ground. Jake Ellenberger, also a wrestler, but he's not nearly the same kind of grappler that Jake Shields is. No one's on Jake Shields' level on the ground at welterweight. So Ellenberger's probably going to use his wrestling to keep the fight standing and try to outbox Jake Shields the way George St. Pierre did. Whether Jake Ellenberger has the kind of boxing that George St. Pierre does, you know, that should make the fight interesting.
How do you think this fight's going to turn out?
Probably Jake Shields.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next fight. We got Court McGee versus Dong Ji Yang.
Well, Court McGee won the Ultimate Fighter reality show last year, and he is primarily a striker. This fight is actually going to be really entertaining. He's primarily a striker. So Dong Ji Yang, also a striker. Two guys who really, what they lack in technique, they make up in enthusiasm. Fights probably not going to end up on the ground. Yeah, Dong Ji Yang, he trains with the Korean Zombie. You might have, one of the most colorful nicknames in all of mixed martial arts. They both are grapplers who are comfortable enough on the ground to avoid being taken down once and pinned there for the rest of the round. So yeah, this one's probably going to be the fight of the night candidate.
Okay.
Except for possibly one other one we'll talk about in a few minutes.
And who do you think is going to come out on top on this fight?
I gotta go with Yang, actually. Court McGee, he won the reality TV show, but it's a TV show. We have a TV show that finds out who's really good at mixed martial arts. It's called Mixed Martial Arts.
Right.
So, and Yang is actually he tore through most of. He's got a ton of first-round knockouts. He tore through most of the Korean circuits and a little bit in Japan too. So he's fought his way across the halfway around the world at least.
Right, and now he's going to make his debut in the U.S. Okay, cool.
So we'll see.
So then we have Jonathan Brookins versus Eric Koch.
Yeah, this one sounds like it's going to be a little one-sided. So Brookins is a grappler who most people probably remember from his fight with Jose Aldo a few years ago, when Jose Aldo was still rising through tearing through the ranks of the featherweight division. Jose Aldo kicked. He kicked Jonathan Brookins' leg apart for about 10 minutes, but that's more than most people actually last. So actually the only other people to last more than 2 rounds with Jose Aldo in the last few years, Uriah Faber and Mark Hominick, who are at the very top of the division. So Brookins is in good company. He's got a lot of heart. But Eric Koch is going to, he's a striker. He's a just devastating striker, really young, really fast, really powerful. He's going to, we both know what, I mean, Brookins desperately wants the fight to get to the ground. I don't think he's going to be able to take it there. If he does, he's clearly more comfortable. He's he's going to outclass Eric Koch on the ground, but he's going to have to walk through a lot of leg kicks, a lot of punches to take it there. It's going to be rough. Okay,
and the last fight that we're going to preview, we're going to talk about is Belcher versus McDonald.
Right, Alan Belcher and Jason McDonald. Belcher has actually won Fight of the Night bonuses his last 4 fights. 1 knockout, 1 submission, and a couple of just Fight of the Nights flat out. So he's an excellent, excellent fighter, very exciting. Hasn't quite had a lot of success against the top tier of the middleweight division, but neither has Jason McDonald. So these two guys who they're a really good matchup for each other. Jason McDonald is a grappler, just a pure grappler. He lasted 2 full rounds against Damian Maia, who's the division's #1 grappler without a doubt. Ultimately lost, but he did acquit himself very well in that fight. And Belcher's no slouch on the ground either. I mean, Belcher's a very well-rounded fighter. He's not going to submit McDonald by any stretch of the imagination, but he is going to. I think this fight's going to be really interesting because Belcher, gets into tough spots and gets himself out of it. That's what makes him so exciting.
Okay, so if you had to pick one, which fighter do you think has the most to gain from the exposure?
Probably Alan Belcher. He hasn't tried and failed so many times against top competition as Jason McDonald. No matter what happens, no one's going to think of Jason McDonald as a championship contender anytime soon. We've had Anderson Silva as the champion in that division, and we've already seen what happens when a guy with grappling and no striking goes against Anderson Silva time and time again. I mean, Damian Maia tried it. Tyler Zletis tried it. I mean, the whole stand in front of Anderson Silva and flop backwards just does not work. Neither does standing in front of Anderson. Not much works against Anderson Silva.
Generally, being in the ring with Anderson Silva doesn't seem to work for anybody.
No, it hasn't worked out in a few years for a lot of people. So I think Alan Belcher, since he hasn't had that kind of exposure to the top tier just yet, he would not be as ridiculous a challenger to Anderson Silva as Jason McDonald would, even if Jason McDonald were to win. So I think Alan Belcher would have a lot more to gain than Jason McDonald from this.
Okay. So, other than the UFC card, there's also been lots of drama involving everybody's favorite fighter, Nick Diaz.
It's been a weird few days for the UFC. So
let's go to the
basically
over here.
Yeah, basically. Originally, Nick Diaz was going to challenge Georges St-Pierre for the UFC welterweight title. Nick Diaz is the current Strikeforce welterweight champion. And on that same card, BJ Penn was going to fight Carlos Condit in another welterweight matchup. Both of them great fights, great matchups. But Nick Diaz is, he disappeared. He no-showed a pair of press conferences, one in Toronto, one in Las Vegas. And the UFC got a little nervous about having this guy, headlining a championship fight. What if he disappears on fight night? What if he disappears, after fight night? So the UFC removed him from the card and had
Nick Diaz
had Carlos Condit step in to replace him, leaving BJ Penn without an opponent. So Carlos Condit and Georges St-Pierre are now going to fight for the UFC welterweight championship. Carlos Condit, former champion in the WEC, which was subsumed by the UFC a couple of years back.
Is this as appealing a fight as the original?
I think so. I think Nick Diaz is definitely the better fighter. I think if Nick Diaz and Carlos Condit fight 10 times, Nick Diaz comes out on top 9 times. So Carlos Condit is another wrestler with good ground and pound, just like Georges St-Pierre. But Georges St-Pierre has plowed through a lot of wrestlers with really good ground and pound in the welterweight division over the last few years. So this is going to be, it'll be an interesting. We'll see how much Carlos Condit's developed since his WEC days. But Georges St-Pierre is always training. Georges St-Pierre is always getting better, and Georges St-Pierre is probably going to, I look forward to not seeing a one-sided Georges St-Pierre fight. I mean, he went years without losing a single round. I mean, he's as dominant a champ as there is in the UFC, other than Anderson Silva.
Okay, so now that Condit moves in to fight GSP, who's BJ Penn gonna fight now?
Well, that's what the UFC asked its fans on Facebook, and the fans
surprise, surprise,
have a sense of humor. They picked Nick Diaz. So Nick Diaz steps in to replace Carlos Condit, who steps in to replace Nick Diaz. And now Nick Diaz is fighting BJ Penn at UFC 137.
And how do you think that fight's gonna turn out?
Well, this is interesting. Both guys are unorthodox strikers. They're not primarily boxers. They're primarily grapplers, but they've picked up some striking over the years. BJ's always getting better on his feet. And Nick Diaz, he's made overtures about getting into boxing, but he's good at boxing from mixed martial artists. Honestly, I think BJ Penn is one of the few people in the UFC that could hang with Nick Diaz on the ground. So that makes the fight all that more interesting. And as far as on the feet, Frankie Edgar is the only person to outstrike BJ Penn in years. BJ Penn even outstruck Georges St. Pierre when they fought the first time. Mm-hmm. So, very competent striker. So, it depends which BJ Penn shows up. As always, that is always the answer to any BJ Penn fight. A motivated BJ Penn probably beats Nick Diaz, second or third round. But Nick Diaz has never been knocked out. He has a titanium chin. He takes inhuman amounts of punishment, and so does BJ Penn. BJ Penn's never been knocked out. He was TKO'd by Georges St. Pierre after a really brutal fight. But it's going to be really interesting between two guys who are great at grappling but prefer striking. So.
And when is this card?
This card is in 3 weeks.
Okay.
So end of September, and we're going to see.
Right.
Who knows? How many more shuffle? How much more they're going to shuffle the card around? It's going to be fun.
Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for your analysis.
Of course.
Look forward to having you again.
Sure. Sounds great.
All right. Thanks.